during client meeting. We walk through, explain what all the different documents are, things to think about. Okay, we're going to give to charity. What are we going to give to charity? Give to charity now, later.
Yeah, and just to be tactical, we are not doing legal reviews. Okay, so that's what a lawyer's for, or you can do like self-help things like trust and will, or there's like fill in the blank wills. That doesn't matter. The hard part is like, okay, who's going to make the decisions for you? People are like, I don't know. Let's talk about that. And where do you want your money to go? What do you want to do with it? And when we review estate plans, we're really trying to make sure your wishes are followed. Well, what if I don't know my answer now? I'm like, just put something. Like, well, where's my money going? I don't know, but if you don't pick, the government gets it. Like, well, then give it to my local dog rescue. Awesome. I don't care. Like, just put a name down and go from there.
Welcome to the Childfree Wealth Podcast, hosted by Bri and Dr. J, certified financial planner. Here we discuss life and finances as it relates to being child-free. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Please consult your advisor before implementing any ideas heard on this podcast.
All right, Child-Free Wealth listeners, we are in course number 6 of the CFP planning. So we're talking to Bri about what does a CFP learn? And this is the last course, really. There's one after if at capstone, but it's kind of like you just do a project. So we're not going to talk about that one. But this is Bri's favorite topic of all time to talk to clients about, or at least she says it some days. And that is estate planning. For some reason, Bri enjoys talking about dying. I don't know. What do you think of this course overall?
I thought it was great. It was honestly very quick for me because I know a lot of this stuff already and enjoy it. It was quick and easy to get through, and I'm glad it was the last one because at this point in all of my courses, I was ready to be done with my courses.
Yeah, like if insurance was the last one, like that'd be really painful. All right. First section starts off with an overview of estate planning. What'd you get out of there? And by the way, remember, we are talking about both what you learn in the education and how does it change for child-free folks.
Yeah, so overview of estate planning, it was really just saying what estate planning is and why it's important. So estate planning is figuring out what's going to happen with everything that you own that's considered your estate once you pass. It was very brief, very high level.
Yep. And by the way, for all the child-free folks, if you don't have an estate plan, it goes to who knows who. I just had somebody online, social media. They posted, hey, my brother died, had no kids, and we're now trying to figure out his estate, no will, no process. I'm like, yep, that sucks. Not only did you lose your brother, but now you have to figure out all of this stuff. All right. Number 2, forms of property ownership.
This is talking about what people often hear as joint tenants with rights of survivorship, just how properties are owned. So often a question we'll ask, especially if you're married and own a home, is, well, do both of you own the home or do one of you own the home? And a lot of times people say, well, we both own it. Okay, you say that, but does the paper say that you both own it? It's going through even vehicles, making sure that those vehicles are owned by both people. It's the legal paperwork that people tend to gloss over when it comes to some of these things.
Yeah, and for our child-free folks, if you are not married, it does change some of the rules versus being married on how things are titled and how they're passed. And you really should have a partnership agreement for some of this stuff. Like, there are some big considerations. If you're going to buy a house with somebody that you're not married with, we need some other paperwork. Number 3, gifting.
Gifting, this is exactly what it sounds like. Whether you can gift money to somebody, how much you can gift to them every year. So there's the annual exclusion. This year it's $18,000 you can pass or you can give to somebody when you're alive. If you want to gift them through your estate and the amount there. So in 2024, you can give up to $13.61 million to somebody tax-free. After that, it starts getting taxed. That is just quick, brief numbers there. They kind of went more in depth on it later.
Yeah, a little child-free spin on this. If you are married, there's unlimited gifting to your spouse. If you're in a partner and you are not married, you're limited to 18 grand. It's kind of an interesting kind of side note. Now, if you go over that, you can come out of your estate, but like people often don't think about it. So I'm married now, but I'm going to use a hypothetical that I'm, not married. I buy my wife a car. Why? Because I'm just trying to be nice. That's over the 18,000. Either we got to pay. Well, that's all right. My spouse at that point, not married, good point. I got to pay either taxes on that, or I have to file a form as part of my gift estate tax and say, oh, I gave like it gets really, really paperwork heavy very quickly. Number 4, gross estate.
This is everything that's going to be added up in your estate. So cash you have, property you have, items you have, all of that gets counted in there.
Now, sometimes some things are not counted in your estate. So this is where we get a discussion about like life insurance, whether you own it or not, who's the owner, who owns it, who's the beneficiary. There's some like weird things there. There are tricks to say, oh, well, I gave this money to someone else, depending on the look back and how far, then it's not in your estate, or was it? Like really interesting things here, especially if your parents are passing on a bunch of money. It's been one of those discussions about how do we give it and who and when and where. All right, number 5, estate tax calculations. Got to have more taxes.
Yes. So this is if you are over that 13.61 million, then we're going to start adding some estate tax on there. Technically, you're given a credit for the amount of taxes prior to that, but the simplest way to think about it is you don't pay taxes for the first 13.61 million. After that, you start paying taxes. It's a progressive tax system, so just like income taxes now. But the highest rate on there is 40%. So those taxes, if you are not careful about your estate tax planning, can really get you.
Yeah, and little kind of slice in time. So we are here in June of 2024. That is when it is 13.6 million. At the end of 2025, so technically like January 1st, 2026, that estate tax is going to cut in half the allowance. So it's going to go from like 13.6 million to something like 7 million. We don't want the exact number. And then everything above 7 million is 40%. If by any chance your estate or your parents' estate is going to be over 7 million, got to figure that out. Number 6, generation skipping transfer tax.
This is tax on skipping a generation. You can transfer property to people who are, if they are in your family line, they have to be at least 2 generations below you. So it could be or great niece or great nephew. Yep. Yeah. It's much easier to think grandparent to grandchild than it is than like skipping the next one. They have to be at least 2 generations below you. If they are not related to you and they're not in your family line, they have to be within 37 and a half years younger than you up to 62 and a half years younger than you to be counted as a skip person, in which you can transfer things to them. There's taxes there, but you're skipping the taxes on the generation directly below you.
Yeah, super confusing. By the way, this is one of those like, as child-free folks, we don't have to think about generation skipping as much, but where we do think about it is I've had a bunch of issues recently for some reason. Looking at parents of our child-free folks, they've got a trust set up and the child-free person gets X amount or income or whatever it is, but then their kids get the rest. And that's in their like trust documents, in their wills and stuff. That's a big problem. Because if you're going to be child-free and never have kids, what happens to that money? It's a tough conversation. It's one you need to really have before your parents die, but nobody actually wants to have that. Hey, by the way, mom and dad, I know you got lots of money and you've got to set up in this trust, but I'm never going to have kids, so can I have it? That actually is the conversation, but boy, is that hard. And we've been running into this quite a bit. The only parents we take on regularly are parents who are child-free folks. We tend to find they're either broker than we thought or richer than we thought. The ones that have a bunch of money in the inheritance, this generation skipping structure works to save them money, but it doesn't work if there's no generation to skip to. You could actually set up, like dynasties and other things where like it's going many years.
If your parents are the ones setting it up. If it's your grandparents setting it up for you, then you're good. Because we've had that recently too, where we've seen.
Yeah, it's depending on how many generations. But here's the thing. Your grandparents can actually set it up so that some of it goes to you and then some of it goes to your next generation. Like it just gets really confusing. This is one of those where like your financial planner works with an estate attorney, maybe with the courts. Like it's a big deal. All right. Number 7, estate planning documents.
Estate planning documents. This is pretty simple. It's your will. So it says what happens to everything after you pass. Power of attorneys, both medical and financial, those are going to say what you want done and who's going to be able to take care of that when you're alive but can no longer do it for yourself. Your living will, sometimes also called an advance directive. It is related to healthcare and stating your wishes. Do you want to be hooked up to a bunch of machines to save your life support, or do you just not want them? Specifying those things in there. And then one that was not in there, but I'm just going to include it anyway, is like an in case I die folder or a death binder, I love you folder, whatever, just saying where all your information's at. That's really important to go with estate planning as well.
Yep. And we've talked about this in other episodes, but challenge for child-free folks is who do you appoint to be your power of attorney or executor? Who do you trust to do that? We're actually working on creating a product. So hopefully by the end of the year, we'll be able to start helping people and being their executor and being their power of attorney, because it's such a huge issue. You know, there's all these assumptions in your estate planning document that your next of kin will do it. And by the way, it's also in law. This is not just the document you wrote up. Like, this is in the healthcare and the government, all that. It's all got next of kin in there. And we just mess up the system. Now, Bri, while you were there, they're talking about the documents. Did they have any solutions for what happens if you don't have next of kin?
Good luck.
No, there's not. I've been searching for this a lot. So I keep asking people like, hey, have you found anything? Hoping somebody has a solution. I haven't found anything. All right. Number 8, probate process. Everybody loves probate. No, nobody does.
Yes. Probate is a process where your will gets reviewed and goes before the courts, making sure everything goes where you want it to. It's kind of a pain in the butt process. Most people don't like it. You'll often hear people say, do everything you can to avoid probate because they don't want it tangled up in the government's hands. Just the really annoying process you have to go through.
Yep. The easiest way to avoid probate is to put beneficiaries on all your accounts, because things that go through beneficiary pass outside of probate, usually. By the way, everything with estate planning is usually. There's always that little caveat, it depends. I think the other one on the probate process, it depends on which state you're in. So some states are pretty expensive. California, I just looked at it, I think it was 4% for the first $100,000, and then it goes down, but it's pretty expensive. Other states, not so much. It depends on, who's doing it and how that goes through the process. Some states are pretty easy for small being less than $100,000. Once you get $1 million, oh, forget it. It's in the courts and doing all that. And plus you got to pay for the attorneys, and it becomes a challenge. All right. Number 9, trusts.
Trusts. This is I feel like I've gotten a lot of questions from people saying, do I need a trust? Well, you might. A trust is essentially a document that's a little bit more high level almost than a will. And you can create a trust. You can title your assets to a trust. It can help you avoid probate. And then it really is giving you more control after you pass of your assets. So let's say you have a bunch of different things that you want to make sure go to somewhere, and you're worried that somebody can't handle them, or they can't get them all at one time. You're afraid that it will essentially ruin their life by getting too much at one time. So instead, you're going to create a trust so that they can slowly receive things as they need, or for specific purposes. It's just giving control to your money and your assets after death, essentially.
Yeah. And by the way, if you go to a lawyer and say, do I need a trust? The answer is yes, because they build for that time. I'm just being transparent on that. Whether you actually need a trust, it depends on how simple your will and wishes are. So Bri didn't specify, but let me go ahead and specify. So you've got that you're going to pass on money to your brother, sister, sibling, whatever it is, who has some type of addiction, medical problem, crises, whatever it is. Yeah, you probably need a trust to protect them from themselves. I had somebody say, hey, I want to pass it on to so-and-so as long as they're not on drugs right now. Well, that's what a trust is for. You pay a trust company to go and all right, we got to do a B test and let's see if you're still on drugs before you get that makes sense. If on the other hand, you're hey, my extra money, it's all going to go to my nieces, nephews, and I'm not worried about that, how they're going to use it, whatever. Cool. No big deal. It depends on how complex you are. The other thing that happens though, if you create the trust, you have to then title everything in trust and move accounts over. And a lot of people create the trust, but they don't do the paperwork. They don't move their accounts or other things. So you've just paid an attorney to set something up that you're not using. So it's a kind of a balancing act. Number 10, charitable gifting.
This is really determining who is going to get what money and how. So with charities, we'll often give like more traditional accounts to because they don't have to worry about the taxes. Whereas if you want to give money to a niece or nephew, we want to give them Roth accounts because then they don't have taxes on there. It is going through determining the best course of action from a financial standpoint of who to give money to and where. Best to benefit both the charity and then also yourself. Sometimes with this in estate planning, we'll kind of cross back and forth, but we'll often encourage people to give while they're alive in order to get those tax benefits because it can save them some money versus when you pass, doesn't really matter at that point.
Essentially, when you're dead, you get no benefit. It's kind of like how,
yeah,
you're already dead. You can't get a tax break. But if you have exactly the same amount of money in a traditional IRA as you do in a Roth IRA, you give the traditional to the charity because they don't pay taxes. You give the Roth IRA to your niece or nephew because they get it tax-free, essentially. And I say essentially because there's always weird things. But that does matter. And who you give what to and which accounts does matter. And also, when I get to this part in estate planning, if you're like, I'm going to give $14 million to a charity, I'm like, not in your estate. We are going to do that other times in your life because you don't necessarily, and this is where we can get a charitable trust, we can get different things, but there's a lot of things you can do to still get the benefit and save on your taxes without doing your estate plan. Like a lot of child-free folks kind of tend to default, like, I'm just going to give it all to charity. All right, fine. But that doesn't mean you should give them like it all when you die. And that's like, it's a weird concept to work around. Like one of the ones, and you definitely need professional help on this, but you can give money to a charity and say like, hey, charity, I'm going to give you this money in the future, but I'm going to get the income off it or some of the money off it. It's actually part of a charitable trust. I get credit for it now, but I give it to you later. Like there's some funky things you can do that'll benefit you. If you just go, oh, well, the national parks get everything left over when I'm done, you might have paid more taxes than you had to pay. Let's put it that way. Number 11, business plan.
If you listen to what a CFP learned before this, episode 5, the retirement planning, we talked a little bit about it. Succession planning, though, it's determining what's going to happen when a person dies. Like if you own a business. So like if Jay dies, what's going to happen to child-free wealth? Talking about that.
Bree's going to give me a Viking funeral. She already knows that.
Oh, yes. That part has already been decided. But it is actually running the business, how it's going to be run, whether or not you need life insurance policies on the key players in there, who's going to run it, what's that going to look like, who's going to take over the person who's died, their ownership of it. All of those components of, okay, you've built a business, now what? What happens when you're no longer around?
Yeah, and this goes a little bit into miscellaneous planning, which is the next one too. One of my favorite ones here right now is social media accounts. So you have a giant Instagram following. Can they keep using it? Can they profit off your name? Do they have to delete it? Like, it sounds silly, but that's actually a big concern right now. People are, well, that's not a business. No, it is. Like, this is the whole debates right now about all the, Prince and others, and they're dead and they're doing like hologram shows and like, can I use your likeness? And like, good questions. We'll use my personal example. So got a book out, got another one coming out at the end of the year, Childfree Guide to Life and Money, got to give the plug. But, I die. Well, does my wife own that? Does the business own it? Can the business use the content? Can the business use my name? That's a good question that has to be in the estate planning documents that you don't really think about until later. Also, by the way, in the business planning, if I keep going the book one, copyrights die a certain time after you die, and who owns that? And like all of these really interesting things. If you really like get excited about estate planning, watch after big stars die and what happens to their catalog and their likeness, and how it's going to be a really interesting thing that we don't have the legal like answer for right now. I wonder if you're a child-free person and you're a celebrity, you don't have a will, and the state now owns everything you own. Do they own the copyright? And like, can they like be you? I don't know. We'll have to think about that. Number 12, miscellaneous planning.
Well, I mean, you kind of just mentioned it with the social media accounts. Planning for anything that you might have. So on Facebook, there's an option to change an account to like remembering, determining, hey, is it going to just live on forever? Is it going to be deleted? Is it going to be destroyed? Is your laptop going to be put through a shredder? Some people really don't want anything on their computer to be found, so they want it through a shredder. All those weird things that you don't necessarily think of when it comes to estate planning, putting in there. Special items, that can be one too. The kind of more nitty gritty of what actually happens to your stuff.
Yeah, and I'm not going to go into what's on your laptop or not. This is the running joke about, in case of death, please clear my browser history. But here's one of the other miscellaneous that wasn't mentioned somewhere in here, and it should have been, is who takes care of my pets? So we've got a Mastiff and a jerk cat. Like, who gets them? Do they get money to take care of them? Are they okay doing that? Like, do they know it? Like, when do they come in? If you're working with a rescue, can they adopt them out? Like, great questions that we need to put in our documents. It's also why the estate planning documents become like a living thing. Like, let's update them every year or 2 or 3 because, I hate to say it, but pets come and go and life changes and other things. It's also one of those things why, like, giving things to your parents as the default choice for your estate plans may not be the right answer because they're older than you. Statistically, you're gonna outlive them. How does that fit in there? I think when I get into this miscellaneous plan, I'm like, I ask people, like, anything else special you want to make sure? And they're like, no, not really. I don't have anything heirloom. Or I'm like, okay. Then I'll explain. My family's still fighting over a $10 desk. This $10 desk was my grandfather actually had built it. When I say it's $10, because he probably didn't even spend that much on wood. But he built it. That matters. Who gets it? How do we fight over it? It becomes an issue. Anything you put in your will helps you. Also, other ones in here, like, do you want to be cremated? Do you want to get composted? That's my new favorite this week. Getting composted, there's a company called Recompose that does that. Like, I don't care, but that all needs to be in your plan. Number 13, estate planning process.
This is just talking about how you're going to go about and do this, who you need to talk to, things you need to think about. It's really walking you through the process. So if you were to meet with us in a client meeting, it's what we do. During client meeting, we walk through, explain what all the different documents are, things to think about. Okay, we're going to give to charity. What are we going to give to charity? Give to charity now, later, and talking about things like those $10 desks.
Yeah, and just to be technical, we are not doing legal reviews. Okay, so that's what a lawyer's for, or you can do like self-help things like trust and will, or there's like fill in the blank wills. That doesn't matter. The hard part is like, okay, who's going to make the decisions for you? People are like, I don't know. Let's talk about that. And where do you want your money to go? What do you want to do with it? And when we review estate plans, we're really trying to make sure your wishes are followed. We're not going, well, if you move to the state of blank, then this will happen and like this. No, that's what a lawyer's for. Okay. We're not trying to make sure the document is written in a certain language or whatever. No, what we're trying to do is, okay, so you said this wants to go to all your nieces and nephews. Great. Well, you left out this other nephew. Why? Is there a reason for that? If so, how do we address it? Oh, this one has a special need. We need to, that's where it becomes really interesting. It also it has to be an ongoing process. Yeah, everybody's like, well, what if I don't know my answer now? I'm like, just put something. Well, where's my money going? I don't know, but if you don't pick, the government gets it. Like, well, then give it to my local dog rescue. Awesome. I don't care. Just put a name down and go from there. So I've always joked, but it's true that you love estate planning. After you finish the course, do you still?
Yeah, I still love estate planning. I think it's fun and interesting, and I don't know. I guess it makes me weird that I like this, but it's fun.
We all have their own things. I'm one of those, I don't really love estate planning, but the question about who makes decisions for child-free folks is what I've been working on for a couple of years to try to figure out solutions. So I've spent a lot of time in this. And the answer is the system's broken, but I can't fix the system. All I can do is fix individuals' plans. And I was at a conference recently and we were talking about estate planning. They're like, yeah, we usually do that for our clients in their 50s and 60s. I'm like, you come and say hi to me. You got a pulse. We're doing your estate plan. I think the youngest I've done is 21. And they'll be like, well, why? Well, you can get hit by a bus at any age. I'm just calling it. Bri and I jokingly will say you get taken away by aliens, but it's hard to prove that you're taken away. But you need to figure this stuff out today, not tomorrow, not 10 years down the road. Because if you wait until, I'll wait till I'm sick, well, then you might not be able to make the decisions for you. So it becomes an issue. I give you a hard time, Bri, but I actually think it's a good area to dig into.
If you enjoyed the show, please consider leaving a rating or review. We'd love to keep the conversation going. Please let us know your thoughts wherever comments are available, or email us at media@childfreewealth.com. To stay up to date, find and follow Childfree Wealth on social media. If you're interested in working with us, learn more by visiting our website, childfreewealth.com. We'll see you next time.